I said that he had a hatred for God. He had hatred for being. Why? Because he was rejected. There's no shortage of insane and resentful men, and they strike innocence in all sorts of different ways. The same pathological thought processes characterize the people who shoot up elementary schools or high schools. There are people who brood and dwell on their failures and their resentment and their rejection by the general social community, and often by people of the opposite sex, but often by people of the same sex, even with friendships. And they sit in their basements or in the hellholes they've created for themselves, and they fantasize about taking revenge on the world for the inequities that have been delivered upon them. And then they act. And they're very rare, and they're very unpredictable, and we don't know what to do about them. And they gather a tremendous amount of press coverage and notoriety for their actions, and that's part of what drives it. It's a terrible thing, but it isn't a problem that we know how to solve, because we can't identify the precursors and we can't stop the publicity. You remember the man who shot up the elementary school in the eastern seaboard in the United States? You're going to draw a conclusion from him? You're going to say something general about society because someone was insane enough to go kill children? You can't do that. You can barely generalize about social trends if you do a random stratified poll. Even those things haven't been accurate recently in predicting political outcomes. So it's all well and good for people who are already grinding an axe to say that these acts are, indicative of widespread attitudes towards women. It's like 2 attacks out of 35 million people in 30 years is not indicative of widespread antipathy towards women. I was interviewed in the New York Times about that, and I made a comment that monogamous societies tend to be more stable, which is an absolutely obvious anthropological finding that everyone who's even vaguely educated has known for at least 100 years. And the reporter made much of that, suggesting that I had this idea that, undeserving men should be delivered up women on a platter by some sort of state institutional function, which is not only something that I certainly don't believe, but nobody who's sane has ever believed since the beginning of time. This man who drove over his victims was resentful and full of hatred. And I said that he had a hatred for God. He had hatred for being. Why? Because he was rejected. I'm not excusing it. It's terrible. There's no excuse for him whatsoever. He should have gone out and made some friends. He should have gone to the gym. He should have put himself together. He should have got educated. I don't know. It's also possible that he had a mental illness that wasn't curable. There's no shortage of people who are barely clinging to the edges of the world with their fingertips, and now and then one of them slips off and does something terrible. And it's very difficult to draw general conclusions from that, except that such things happen. The only thing I would say about that is that if you're going to perform an act like that, you usually spend many, many months or many, many years fantasizing about it and the notorious aftermath that will glorify your name. And there's nothing in that that's good. And I've never suggested for a moment that men who are rejected by women should do anything but look to themselves and improve themselves so that they make themselves into the kinds of partners who would be voluntarily attractive to women who were making voluntary choices. It's obviously the only sort of solution that's ever going to work anyways.